The silence in the boardroom was shattered by the sharp crack of a glass falling to the floor. Every head turned, every heartbeat froze. At the far end of the polished oak table, a woman stood trembling, her voice caught in her throat as three men surrounded her like vultures circling prey. And before anyone could react, the door burst open. A tall, broad-shouldered man stepped in, his eyes dark as a storm and his voice low but thunderous. "Hands off the lady." He wasn't just anyone. He was Commander Jack Rourke, a retired Navy SEAL, a single father, a man who had seen war, pain, and the worst of humanity, but never stood by and watched someone innocent get broken in front of him. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, in the quiet power of standing up for what's right, then hit like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because sometimes, courage begins with a single story shared across miles. Jack Rourke had once been a hero on the battlefield, the kind of man who ran toward danger while others ran away. But after losing his wife to cancer and nearly losing himself in grief, he hung up his uniform and moved to a quiet town outside Seattle, raising his 10-year-old daughter, Emma, with all the gentleness he never thought he had. He didn't talk much about the past. The medals sat in a dusty box, the photos of his team locked away. All he wanted was a normal life, coffee in the morning, school drop-offs, the warmth of a small-town sunset. He took a job in corporate security for a logistics firm, figuring that after years of chaos, boardrooms would be the safest place he could be. He was wrong. The company had been struggling, and the CEO, a young and idealistic woman named Claire Donovan, had stepped in to clean house. She was brilliant, compassionate, and unafraid to make hard decisions. But those qualities made her enemies, powerful men who'd built their empires on lies and intimidation. Jack saw it coming before anyone else did, the tension in the air, the whispered meetings, the fake smiles that didn't reach the eyes. He'd seen that look before in war zones, the calm before betrayal. That morning, when Claire walked into the boardroom to present her restructuring plan, she didn't realize the trap had already been set. The three senior executives had conspired to push her out, pinning false accusations on her, threatening her reputation and career. The meeting turned hostile fast, papers slammed, voices raised, words sharpened like knives. Jack had been standing outside, his instincts screaming. When he heard Claire's voice crack with fear, something inside him snapped, the part of him that had once promised to protect others, no matter the cost. When Jack stormed in, the room froze. His presence was a wall of quiet fury. He didn't raise his hand or his voice. He didn't need to. The way he looked at those men was enough to drain the arrogance right out of them. The old warrior had returned, not with weapons, but with truth. He laid out the evidence he'd quietly gathered for weeks, emails, recordings, documents proving the setup. One by one, the men's confidence crumbled. The chairman, stunned and silent, ordered security to escort them out. Claire sank into her chair, shaking, tears spilling as the weight of betrayal lifted. And as the room emptied, Jack simply said, "It's over." But for him, it was far from over. That act of courage brought everything back, memories he'd buried deep, the missions gone wrong, the faces of friends he couldn't save, the feeling of being needed and broken all at once. That night, he sat on the porch with Emma asleep in his arms, wondering if he'd ever truly left the battlefield. But then he looked at the stars and thought of Claire's tearful smile, of the way she had thanked him, her voice trembling but full of gratitude. It reminded him that heroes don't belong only in war, they belong wherever someone stands alone and afraid. Weeks passed. The scandal broke. The company cleaned out the corruption. Claire called Jack into her office, not as a superior, but as a friend. She told him she wanted to start a foundation for veterans transitioning into civilian life, and she wanted him to lead it. Jack hesitated, torn between the safety of anonymity and the call of purpose. But when Emma overheard and said, "Dad, you always tell me we should help people when we can," he smiled and knew his answer. Working on that foundation changed everything. Jack began speaking publicly about resilience, about finding peace after pain. He watched veterans who'd been lost in their own shadows begin to find their footing again. And in those moments, he felt his wife's spirit beside him, calm, proud, and free. Claire became part of their lives too, not as a boss, but as a friend who understood the language of scars and strength. There was something unspoken between them, a connection built not on romance but on respect, on having both walked through fire and chosen to keep walking. Years later, people still talked about that day in the boardroom. Not as a scandal, but as a turning point. They said that when Commander Jack Rourke stood up and said, "Hands off the lady," he didn't just protect a person, he protected decency itself. And in a world where silence often wins, that kind of courage can echo louder than any war cry. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment, like this video, share it with someone who might need hope today, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the strength within us all. And before you go, tell us in the comments, what does courage mean to you? Because sometimes, the smallest act of bravery is the one that changes everything.